Right.
Oh,
We did. We actually got up to Scotland this year after missing out last year. 2020 is the only year we didn't. Me and my friend Tom didn't get botanising in Scotland since 1988.
wow.
It was very annoying. Anyway, on the way up, we called it Flanders Moss, and it was quite late on in the year because we were locked down until July, weren't we? Things didn't start opening up till the beginning of July, but we still got a trip away. Looking at Flanders Moss, just as the heather was coming to flower, and we noticed they got really big worms there.
Big worms? You mean snakes?
Oh, that would explain it.
Very big worm.
Lovely.
So that was nice to see, not a plant. The wetter bits had big, nice drifts of white-beaked sedge with a bit of Aerophorum and sundew in amongst it. And lots of Lancashire must have looked like this at one point. The Lancashire
Absolutely.
Lots of cranberries. I didn't include a picture of berries, which was remiss of me, but see how dense they go. And it's amazing to think this is the same genus, if it still is, as bilberry and cowberry. It's such a delicate little thing. And then on drier bits, there's fern typical of acid habitats, the narrow buckler fern, with the unicoloured scales on the rachis rather than the bicoloured scales of the broad buckler fern. But we did get up to Ben Lawes. We visited it again. I say we've been going since '88, and since we've been going, they've enclosed a large area of the lower part of the path up to Ben Lawes, and it's been fascinating going sort of year on year and seeing that change. And just look at the amount of regeneration that's there now. There's birch, there's a couple of species of willows, and there's rowan, and all the other things seem to be thriving under the lack of sheep. And that starts almost immediately from the car park. You're in the enclosed area. As you get slightly higher up, you've gained quite a lot of altitude, but there's still a lot of regen going on. And it looks like a very worthwhile experiment to me. One year, we strayed off the path and found a clump of Goldilocks buttercup, which you don't associate with Ben Lawes area. But then you can just about see the fence there. Can you see my cursor, by the way?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, yes. You can just about see the fence there. And once you get over there, you're into the flat grazed, at this level, acid swards. And then you've got, that's Ben Glass, and the other side of Ben Glass, Ben Lawes. So you've got a way to go. But there's lots of interesting things to look at on the way. It seemed to be a particularly good year for fruit. Oh, there's a magpie on the roof. Both for gardens and out in the wild. I mean, look at the amount of bilberries we saw by the path edge going through the enclosed area. And there was much more berries on the crowberry than we usually get. Has anybody ever been to IKEA? Seen those jars of lingonberry jam? Well, these are the lingonberries. Not crowberries, cowberries. Yeah, Vaccinium vitis-idea. No, I can't remember now. I can't remember anything. Anyway, carrying further up, we start seeing more of the Alpine stuff. There's quite a lot of Alpine club rush carry on. You come to the col between Ben Glass and Ben Laws, and then through to the main quarry and the fantastic sort of hanging gardens there on the very friable mica schist. And of course, its chemical makeup and its physical makeup are both important in why you get so many plants there. It's got the right chemistry for an interesting range of plants, and it falls apart a lot, which creates lots of open space for seeds to get going, and allows a range of annuals to continue to thrive up there. I was having trouble with my camera, so a lot of these pictures aren't as in focus as I would like, but you get the idea of, well, you've seen them. You see all the rose roots and the alchemillas and all sorts, and the little cushions of campion and siphyl and all sorts of things, all sort of jumbled. And you can't trample on it because it's nearly vertical. There's a bit of a fresh bit of mica schist that's come down. It's nice shiny rock when it's first exposed. And in front of it, you've got viviparous bistort. So it has these little bulbils. And we're in August here, so we've missed all the early flowering, but it's interesting to see things in the seed. All the thyme has gone to seed as well. Got the lesser clubrush. Selaginella, yeah. And there's purple saxifrage. All sorts of interesting mosses, of which I know not any names. And there's, I say, there's enough bare ground for the little specialist annual. And yes, we did find the gentiana nivalis, the snowy gentian, but the weather wasn't quite on our side. Enough sunshine to turn flowers, but once you got your eye in, it was still dotted nicely about, and very nice to see. And then in more settled areas, it's good to see the siphyl. We didn't see any flowering this year, but there was plenty of it about. They're very distinctive, those ternate leaves with the very jagged ends and smooth sides to the leaflets. And then coming back down from the quarry, you go over the lip of the col, and there's a very bare area which is exposed in winter, which has the snow and the winds that are really suppressing most plant life. But you get the Naphalion supinum, the dwarf cudweed, specialises in that point, and that's a lovely thing. We saw that in seed as well. The next day we went off to the most westerly of the big Breadalbin hills, Ben Louis, and we parked up in Tyne Drum and followed the river Cononish up into Ben Louis.
Longer walk than we did.
You've done that as well. Yeah. Well, on the north, you see this fantastic bit of Caledonian pine wood, which we'd like to get into one day, but we haven't got there yet. I'm not quite sure how to access it yet. But just some typical things. We see mountain path along the mountain fern along the path, and that's very easily distinguishable from this. You follow the rachis down, and the pinnules get smaller and smaller and smaller, right down to the base. They've got these little tiny pairs of pinnules right at the bottom, and you can get a bit of a lemon scent if you've got a good imagination. This is the Cononish. You recognise that then?
Oh yes, very much.
It seemed a very, very sparse river, not much in the way of plant life, and we didn't see any of many birds. So I think so grey wagtail, but we were looking for dippers all the time. So we wondered if there weren't many invertebrates actually under the stones, but we didn't actually go and look because the path is quite high and steep above the river. This is the path. since we were last there, this 80-metre long building has arrived, and this is the Capensis gold mine. So the path now is a big roadway that takes heavy vehicles up to the gold mine. And earlier this year, they started extracting the first gold after reopening the mine. And I think they get something daft like 24 ounces of gold to every 4 tons of rock they excavate. And it's all in the quartz veins. So there's going to be huge tips of quartz here at some point. So what effect that's going to have remains to be seen. But at the moment, despite its size, it doesn't make too big an impact, does it? It would be better if it had a green roof, perhaps. Carry along the track, we find an old coastal Grasshopper, and it does look different. The whole thing looks less robust than the June ones. Of course, it's supposed to be a different form, isn't it? And the petals aren't quite as round, but you still get it in fairly good quantities in the right place. And this is August. Some of it's already gone to seed. You can see the capsules here, but there's still flowers open. This is approaching Ben Louis. Ben Louis is a very tall peak, though some of it's missing just at the moment. But the equivalent of the corries at Ben Law's are all along here. So that's where we're aiming for. And see the path here, we've passed the gold mine. So it's just become a rough, the sheep farmers' rough track now. But you have to go down here. Then you have to cross the river, hopping from boulder to boulder while this flows steeply past you. And this is the track we follow then, up the side of this.
Yeah, we got as far as the corrie, didn't we?
What, this corrie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, we didn't bother.
And then looked at the rocks on on either side.
Yeah.
And in the stream itself, it's quite a lot of.
Yeah, because stuff is often washed down, isn't it? Yeah. This is a bit further on. You can see they've been, whether they've got money from the gold mine, but since we were last there, there's lots and lots of really good steps being put in. Not that I like the steps; they're quite difficult to use, but they've taken put a lot of effort into keeping this path secure. And these are the faces we were aiming for and got into. And so I was having problems with my camera, but so I haven't included many photos, but we were pleased to find that Alpine Bartsia was growing on those faces. It wasn't in flower, but it's fairly unmistakable. And there was quite a lot of interesting stuff, very much like on the Law's quarries. Being later, the Trolleus, the globe flower, wasn't flowering, and the fairy flax, the Linum catharticum, was in seed. But there's Crepis pallidosa leaves, there's Saxifraga zoides, Angelica, a nice range of the ledge plants, and it's much less grazed there than Ben Law's. So a lot of the swards are full of the plants you have to look out for on the sheep-free places in other mountain areas. And we found our usual little clutch of woodlanders. So right up there, we've got Oxalis acetosa in amongst the rocks. There's also, what's it called? Golden saxifrage. Opposite leaf golden saxifrage, and Adoxa muscatellina. Wooden enemies, there's wooden enemies everywhere, and early purple orchids as well. And of course you can see it's up in the mountains, you see in amongst the mountain alchemillum, mountain lady's mantle, Alpine lady's mantle. And No flowers on the mossy campion, but lovely typical campion seed heads, full of seeds, most of the seeds gone. That's Saxifraga obsitifolia, the purple saxifrage, as is that. And this is the Alpine meadow rue.
That's right.
Alpine. And there's just lots of it. You were walking on it rather than gazing on it on the rocks. And we always like to see this in the hills. Sea pink. People think it is actually a member of the Arctic alpine flora, but mostly known from the coast, of course. But you do get it, 2,000, 3,000 foot. Is Mary still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. Yes, I've just muted during the presentation.
Oh, good.
Yep, so some
thank you.
sedges.
Is that one of the yellow sedges? I think I have a note of it.
I would have.
I was so busy.
I would have thought so, but I wouldn't like to say what it was.
It's very blocky little heads.
Looks like Lepidocarpa.
Right. That's the long one. And there's lots of ordinary flackerants as well. And I did manage to get across to Birkdale quite a bit. There's the screw moss. The June pansies are doing well, if growing slightly out of focus. And one of my things is I knew there were colonies of Polyphemus rufus around. And when I got there and looked for them and found them, I thought, well, why haven't I ever seen those before? Because they were blooming obvious.
It's a case of just finding the right spot, though, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah,
it's so,
and eventually you
so
can see
complicated.
them. You can see them from quite a distance once you know what you're looking for. As they're along quite a lot of the paths. This is a very good year for pyramidal orchids all over the dunes. There's plenty of June helleborines about as well. And this is one of Pat's favourites, blue fleabane. A couple of flowers lurking there, but these lovely big heads.
What's that then? It was, yeah.
And in the new green beach areas, these primary slacks that have developed, there's usually lots and lots of knotted pearlwort, and there's a good amount of that again still. It's a little, it's got just proportionately large flowers to the size of the plant. I mean, they're the leaves, and the flowers are enormous. And I like that Birkdale area because there's such a lot going on there. I mean, I remember for what seemed like years and years, this was the front edge of the dune, and the strand line was along here. But then the green beach started developing. Then this line of dunes developed here, so you got the new slack, and that's happened all the way up to nearly to Southport now. And you've got all this development in various stages, but you've still got the open yellow dune and the semi-fixed dune, and it's just a nice mix of things. This is one of the denizens of the edges of the wetter areas, the Seaside Century. That has rather bigger and brighter, pinker flowers than the common century, and the leaves are so distinctive. Common century has sort of curved, sort of boat-shaped leaves, whereas these are very parallel-sided and then suddenly semicircular at the end, and they're often this dark goldy yellow colour as well. So there's quite a lot of that about, and there's a lot of the lesser century there as well. So you have 3 species of century and various hybrids too. It's a very good strand line year. I could have done a whole thing on the strand line, but I've tried to keep it short because I thought everybody would bring in pictures. There's frosted auric, Atriplex licineata, but there's a good showing of all sorts of the usual strandline things. Yellow rattlers looking good on the grassy edges of the wet areas. The Grostis stolonifera. And normally, the Parapolis strigosa, the hard grass, is quite difficult to see in amongst other plants on the salt marshy bits. But there were some fantastic big thick clumps of it, as you can see here this year, which I don't think I've seen it quite like that before. There's quite a lot of it on Hoylake Red Rocks as well, isn't there?
Oh, yes.
And this is one of the reasons I kept coming back to Birkdale. In one of my June visits, I found this odd little balsam growing right in amongst all the bulboscernus. And it wasn't long after we'd seen the orange balsam on Robert's trip to the Wirral. But there was no sign of any flowers on it. And I asked Phil Smith about what sort of balsam he'd recorded from these salt marsh areas. And he said, we haven't got any balsam recorded from there. So I sent him the pictures, and we couldn't tell from the pictures whether it was Nolime tangere or Capensis. So I kept going back all through June, July, and August, and there was never a flower on it. And it wasn't until the 12th of September that I got these pictures of the flowers, where you can see it had been flowering for a few weeks by then. And it proved it was the orange balsam, the one that you get all along the canals in Cheshire now. But how it wasn't on the edge of the salt marsh, on the shore edge, and it wasn't on the inland edge of the salt marsh. It was in the middle of all the bulboscernus, and there were several clumps of it. So it makes you wonder if there's going to be a problem. It doesn't seem to have been so far. It's an alien species, but it's really has got going. It seems to have got going here, and presumably each one of these seed pods will fling out a whole load more seeds, and we'll have it for a while now. But it hadn't been noticed until this year in this location, in this habitat here. But it was in the salt marsh at Burton as well, wasn't it, Robert?
Yeah.
Yes, there were a few in flower.
Yeah, and that was much earlier. And so why these were so late flowering? So eventually I got half decent pictures of the flowers proving it was Capensis. Now I assumed with the name Capensis it was from South America, which was wrong. It's an American plant, a North American plant, not South America, South Africa. But it's a North American plant. And it's named from one of the capes on the East Coast where it was first discovered. So whether it will hybridize with glandulifera, who knows, and what the hybrid vigor would do. Anyway, another favourite bit of my coast is of our coast is the Hightown and Crosby end of things, which Steve knows very well, of course. There's the Wirral, and is that the Isle of Man boat setting out there?
No, Belfast.
Is that the Belfast Stena line?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's lots of usual things. We observed lockdown quite strongly and didn't go out and about much until quite late in the season, until there was more freedom of movement. So missed the spring basically. But anyway, nice to see the Houndstongue in fruit. Stonecrop doing well. And there's a very deeply coloured version of the field mindweed, the convolvulus on the dunes not far from the Coast Guard station. On the front edge, there's still plenty of the flowers on the sea rocket in amongst the lime grass. And of course, local speciality, the Isle of Man cabbage was doing very well. And the Isle of Man cabbage we could find from the very southern end down near Seaforth Docks, right up to the mouth of the Alt. There's odd scashings of it. And of course, we've got the shingle beach as well, and the sea kale still going there. And when we did our LBS trip there with Steve, there was a magnificent huge plant of flowering horn poppy as well. There's Crithmum and all sorts of typical shingle species well established in this now. This is down the south end, Crosby Baths, of course. And there's amazing down there this year. The amount of sea holly is astonishing.
Oh, look at that.
There's acres of it. And as you head south, there's a broom rape in the sea holly. And then even clumps of sea holly didn't look like they had broom rape in them. When you looked into them, there it was coming out. And there was masses and masses of it. And if you looked up, Steve had some fantastic photos. I think he's put them on the website. Wider views showing these spikes of broom rape zooming up everywhere. And it seems to be a particular form of minor that grows on sea holly. And of course, the sea holly has these big fleshy roots. So presumably, that's why it's able to support such a vast amount of this parasite. So whether the sea holly will still be there next year after being weakened by this amount of broom rape remains to be seen. And this is the Isle of Man cabbage again from right down the southern end. It's very distinctive with the pale yellow flowers and the very grey, finely cut foliage. And then they've got this nice patch of Artemisia. Is it Campestris? I can't remember now. And that is doing very well. It's got the original clumps that Phil noticed, but there's lots of seedlings all around it. So that looks like it's doing very well and looking very different to mugwort, of course, but still obviously an Artemisia when you see it in flower. And no, I think that's about it. Gives a chance for somebody else. So this will do for now.